Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. This is our weekly Leaders Edge training. Remember, we took a couple of weeks to go over business planning and budgeting, and now we've circled back to kvCore, and we're really, between now and the end of the year, going to continue to just plug away at breaking down various components of this platform to make sure you're putting it to best use in your business. So today, unlike some of the prior training that I've done where I kind of just touched on campaigns, today we're really going to spend our entire time together talking about just campaigns, how to understand them in kvCore, how to build off of them, and then also how to create some of your own content as well, so that you can maybe start to feel a little bit confident in tweaking things to feel more like you and your personality and reflective of your business as you understand how the underlying technology is going to work for you in kvCore. I do just want to mention there's been a slight change to the schedule. On the 30th of November, there will be no training. So the original last session was going to cover the EXP Marketing Center. So I've essentially just dropped off that training module and moved everything else back. So just mark your calendars, no training on the 30th. Okay? So let's get started. I'm going to head on over to kvCore. And actually, let me just show you for a quick second the specific things that we're going to cover today. So in terms of a campaign, I'm going to really get very basic and start from the beginning and assume that you really don't have a whole lot of knowledge on this component of the platform. And I'm going to try and do what I can to fill in all the blanks for you. If you have questions along the way, I'm not always super great about managing the chat. So I have no problem if you want to, raise your hand in the Zoom or even just unmute yourself and jump in with your question. Let's make sure that they get answered. We're going to, again, talk about how to really read campaigns and then build on them. And then we're going to talk about how you can even layer in other components of kvCore's automation to make your interaction with your leads that much more robust. And then there's one thing, and Michelle can attest, this actually came up in our own team meetings and interactions. Something this would be a good time to mention is behavioral automation and how you might want to give consideration to that as you implement some campaigns. Okay, so let's head on over. We're going to go right into kvCore, and I'm going to start from my dashboard. When we're talking about campaigns, we're going to be going into the marketing dashboard and then going straight into the smart campaigns section. Okay, when you come to smart campaigns, you're going to see three buttons at the top: My Campaigns, the kvCore library, and templates. When you think of templates, think of a singular action, okay? And I can show you this real quick, but we're really not going to spend time in there. But kvCore has built out, there are probably easily hundreds of templates here under this template library. These are singular actions. So either one email, one text message, one task that you can assign to yourself, or you can chain together to build a campaign, but it's individual messaging. When we talk about campaigns, where we're going to spend our time is really working in the library. A campaign is when you take a bunch of singular actions and singular messaging and you combine them into a sort of an automated touch program that reaches your client over an extended period of time. So you can take those individual actions, assign days, you can even get as granular as down to the minute in kvCore of when the lead should receive those messages. And then, like I said, we're going to show you how to even tweak it a little bit further. So where we're going to spend our time is talking about these campaigns. To start with, if you go to the kvCore library, kvCore has done a very good job of building out a variety of campaigns to cover various leads. So whether you have seller leads, buyer leads, if you have leads come in from a lead generation program, if you have sphere leads that you want to stay in contact with, maybe you're leveraging the open house app that kvCore offers and you receive leads that way. There are a number of campaigns that they've pre-built that you can leverage so that as soon as a new lead comes into your CRM, comes into your database, you can trigger this campaign to immediately begin communication with that lead. One important thing I always emphasize is that a campaign will never replace you. It just rounds out the communication and helps you stay top of mind and in contact with the lead when you can't be everywhere all the time, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's take a look at how to read a campaign. If we're here in the kvCore library, so again, these are the pre-builts. This is what kvCore has designed and made available to all of its users that you can leverage for your own business. You're going to see the name of the campaign, the description of the campaign. So kvCore is going to try and give you a very brief explanation of what the campaign is designed to do. It'll tell you when it's going to start. That's also called a trigger. Who it's typically designed for. And then these two things are really important, channels and touches. Channels is going to tell you within that campaign, those individual action items, what type of action or what form that action will take. And in kvCore, we can be talking about an automated email, an automated text message. We can talk about a phone call where it's going to be a task to you to make a call to that lead, or some other type of task, whether it be to check on their property alerts or review their engagement, but it's something, the action is on you as the agent, okay? So if we wanted to take a look at a specific campaign and understand what was going on with it, let me just pick one at random. I'm gonna say, let's pick a campaign for open house leads. So in the search box, I just typed the word open, hit the magnifying glass, and here I have a campaign. What this is telling me is that that's the name of the campaign, Open House, that it is designed for the leads that are coming in from that app. It starts when the lead comes in with a source of open house, obviously designed for buyers. These are the channels. So this looks like it's going to cover, you're going to have text, email, and phone call vehicles built into this campaign. So you're trying to connect in a variety of ways, which I think is very important. And then you're also talking about 14 touches, which is the consolidation of each of these. That doesn't tell you a whole lot. Where do you go to understand what each of those 14 events looks like? Okay.
Natural.
So go ahead.
Hello, how you doing?
Okay. If there wasn't a question, if you could just go ahead and mute.
And I couldn't, there was no
just
back here. I didn't see your friend, so I went down further.
I got everybody. Okay. So how do you see what those actual events, those touches look like? We're going to click within the campaign. You just click on the title of the campaign, and here you go. This is going to be the meat of the open house campaign. At the top, you'll get an understanding of what the triggers are that lead this campaign to automate, to apply to a particular new lead. Okay, so it comes in for a buyer when the source is open house. Now let's take a look. Here are the 14 touches, okay, all spelled out here. These are all 14. Notice that it starts as soon as hour 4. So like I said, you can be very granular here. So 4 hours after the lead has signed in at the open house, they're going to receive a text message. Okay. Then on day 1, they're going to receive an email message, and you'll see, and so forth, calls, emails. And this 14 touch campaign will take you from hour 4 to day 120. Okay. So this is designed to try and solicit engagement from a lead for the first 4 months after they've attended one of your open houses. But what does each message mean or involve? What does the message itself look like? To see that, again, we're still in the kvCore library. I can click over here on the view button and see what any of those messages mean. Okay, so let's take a look at the email that goes out on day 1. I simply click on view, and here's the body of the email message. Notice that it's all formatted. So when you see these types of brackets, what it will do is it will pull from that field in your lead's profile and insert their name into the message. Okay. So a simple thank you message for attending the open house. How can I be of service kind of message? Okay. So a pretty standard kind of what you would expect. Here's a task on day 2 telling you to follow up with a phone call. Okay. Any question there?
Deanna? Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a way that we can modify those campaigns? So in other words, I did an open house, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I didn't even realize that we could use this. So I would do my own little follow-up. So can I go into that one where it said open house day 1? Thank you for visiting my open house last weekend. Can I just change, like, just get rid of this weekend and thank you for visiting my open house and put like what house it was?
You can. So I'm going to show you, just be careful when you modify. And once we get through how to actually take a campaign and put it into action, one of the next things I am going to cover is how you can modify a campaign and sort of tweak it. In your case, sure. In your case, you're talking about something very specific where you're tweaking it for a minute group of individuals. So when we get into that modification discussion, I'll mention maybe something that you want to do. Because it involves cloning, and so put a pin in that. I'll explain that more in just a minute.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So the idea when you're looking in the library, in the kvCore library, kind of think of it as, library books in a traditional library. You can't write in those books or modify those books in any way. So when you're in the kvCore button here, what you're trying to do is identify a campaign that maybe you like, or maybe even just components of it that you like that you can build on. Okay, so let's say I'm at the point where I do like this campaign, open house. There might be things I want to tweak, or I might just be, maybe I'm not interested in going down that rabbit hole, but I do know I want the automation. So let me get some campaigns in place. Okay, so the next step to do that is to take this campaign and get it into your campaign library. Okay, the way that you do that, you just
Before you do that, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, so just so I can understand, when it says this open house, is the source? I know it can trigger with hashtags, which was one of the question. Is it that we put in the hashtag open house, or is this particular campaign working with something else?
So hold on to that thought for just a second, Millie, because what I'm going to do now is we're going to take this campaign and pull it into our own library. And then in addition to showing you how to tweak a campaign, I'm also going to talk about how to look at the triggers. And what you're specifically asking about is what would trigger a campaign to start with one of your leads. So I'll cover that in just a minute.
Thank you.
Sure. So, okay, let's go ahead and add this to our library so we can tackle these questions. So I'm simply going to click on this button here to the right, add to my library. You'll notice that I'm going to get that notification in the bottom left corner. I got a green check mark. That's a good sign. So now I'm going to head over to this My Campaigns button. This is going to show me all of the campaigns that either I have created, I have modified, or I have copied in from the kvCore library. Okay, so this list is obviously going to be smaller and less robust than what kvCore has in its library. All right, so let's take a look under My Campaigns and let's find that open house. And I have it here a couple times because I've done this training a couple times. So I have it here just pulled in from the kvCore library. I can do a couple of things here because I have it in duplicate and I know that they're both the same. I could always check one off and just go up and remove it from the library, or I can just go ahead and leave it and then maybe modify one and leave the other intact. When you pull a campaign into your own library, when you click on it, now, beyond just being able to see the individual components of the campaign, you can scroll all the way up to the top and you can now modify, you can edit the actual triggers of what would cause that campaign to start in your kvCore with your leads. And we're going to go over this specifically. That's going to be this first box here. The second box, you can either remove a campaign, which I mentioned if I have it in duplicate, I could go ahead here and remove it. If I created a campaign or modified a campaign and wanted to share it with someone else, you can actually generate a campaign code here with the share button. And I'll show you how we can do that a little bit later. The other thing that you can do is clone a campaign. If you take something that kvCore has built and you pull it into your library and then you want to modify it, I encourage you to clone the campaign. So what that will do is it's going to create a copy for you to work from, but leave the original campaign build intact. So Rochelle, to kind of circle back to your question, you want to do something very specific to kind of catch up your people from that one open house. And then you want to maybe leverage this campaign going forward, perhaps as it stands, as it might normally run, to be able to reach out to any new open house attendees. So in that case, clone would be a perfect action for you. So what you can do is you can click on the clone button, and then it's going to start to pull you through the campaign logic. Okay. I'm going to hold off a second because I want to take that campaign logic and actually work it through here from the trigger box. Okay. But I think hopefully as we go through that, you'll see a little bit more about what I mean. Okay. And then the other thing is you can take a look at the campaign history. So right now it'll tell me, remember I said I had 2 copies of this campaign. I last pulled this campaign in about a year ago, last November. Okay. So if I went and looked at the other one, it would say that I pulled it in today on the 16th. Make sense so far? Okay. So, as I said, just like in the kvCore library, here in your library, you're going to see every touch spelled out. But now, instead of just being able to view that touch, you have the ability to edit that touch. My personal preference, and you don't have to do it this way. My personal preference is that when I copy a template over from the kvCore library, I prefer to clone it and then make edits to the clone and leave the original campaign intact, because there could be pieces of this original kvCore built campaign that I don't want to permanently overwrite, okay, that I might want to be able to leverage at another time. Okay, so I recommend if you're going to make any edits, go ahead and clone it. So let's take a look at the trigger piece of this, and I'll show you cloning, and then I'm going to show you how to modify pieces of this. That'll, I think, circle back to Rochelle's point. But first, let's just say I want to take this open house campaign, not interested in making any changes. I just know that I need something in place to get going with these leads when they come in. Maybe I have an open house on Saturday or Sunday and want to get this in place right away. Let's take a look at the triggers that will cause this campaign to run. Okay, to do that, we're going to click on the edit button, and you're going to go through several screens of information specifically related to this campaign. Okay, there are a few things that might look a little bit different from my kvCore to yours. Just as a reminder, I'm on a team platform. Every once in a while, something will look different. So for example, in this case, I have the ability to see team members, to see my entire team, or to just see me. You should probably just be able to see you unless you're managing a team platform also. So the scope will default to you. You can either choose one of these 3 criteria at the top to trigger or to start a campaign, or if you wanted to layer in multiple criteria, you're going to work from this section down here, advanced triggers. Okay, so if you only have one criteria and you can manage it through one of these 3 buttons, you'll do it up here. If you want to do something more advanced, or if you want to do multiple triggers that have to work together. For example, maybe multiple triggers is, you see there's one trigger already set here. The source is open house. Maybe another trigger might be that the phone is and there should be an option here for not empty. Let's say, how about we try email? Oh, there we go. I just have to change my logic. Okay, so phone is not empty. So maybe because I know that there are text messages, or maybe I'm working with a campaign where I want to layer in a lot of text messaging, but the campaign won't really make sense if I don't have a phone number provided to me from the lead. So this would be a case of I have multiple criteria that I want met before this campaign goes into play. So in this case, when a lead comes in through the Open House app, kvCore is automatically going to assign that source as open house. So that's the first criteria that will be met. And then we want to make sure that the phone is not empty. Make sense? That would be if I wanted to do multiple criteria. Okay, I'm going to X off of that one. Now let's say I didn't have multiple criteria. I just wanted to take a campaign, and anytime that that lead comes in new, I just wanted to be able to have this campaign start. So I can start typing here. I can click on the button, lead is new, and I can add this additional sort of more detailed component that when the lead is new and comes in under open house, I can do that. Another way, I can select hashtag. Now notice when I pick hashtag, it doesn't remember my lead is new criteria. So again, if you're working through one of these buttons as your triggers, you can only choose one of them. Anything more than that, anything more complex, you're going to have to work down here in advanced. You do also have the ability to not have a trigger, which I'm not sure why I'm sure there's probably a scenario for that. Otherwise, why would the option be there? But I can't imagine that you wouldn't want to have a trigger to get the automation running. The other two things that I suggest down here, you have always run and locked. I encourage these to both be set to no as a default. And here's why. Always run means that if you have multiple campaigns in place, so you might have an open house campaign if somebody visits your open house, then you might have a buyer nurture campaign, which is typically more long-term, like 12 months, or you can even extend it longer. You might have multiple campaigns that won't make sense if they're running side by side at the same time. That the lead might think, well, gee, I just got this message yesterday and I feel like I'm getting the same email message again today or a week later on a very similar topic. Something's odd. Does this person even know what they're doing? So you want to be very careful about choosing always run, because it could end up putting you in a situation with a lead where they're going to receive multiple campaigns because the lead is triggered by multiple events in the way your campaigns are set up, if that makes sense. So I say always default to no. If you have a campaign like a sphere campaign, for example, that just reaches out with a friendly sort of once a month, maybe you do an email campaign where you build out like the most important dates of every month, like reminding people of holidays or thinking holidays, or, like, I don't know, National Donut Day, National Coffee Day. You can do something fun, right? So a case like that, you can do a campaign there, which is going to have no effect on your more real estate related campaign content. So then in that case, that might be a case on that campaign specifically to switch off to yes. For the most part, though, default to no. Then you're going to go to next.
Before you do, can I go back to that source?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused. Is that source when you put open house? So, let's say I have an open house and I have my checklist, or not my checklist, my sign-in sheet. So now I'm putting in all those contacts into kvCore and then adding the hashtag open house to make that the source. I feel like I'm missing something.
So source is going to be different from hashtag. Source, if you think about the way that you're doing your open house now, and you have a manual sign-up sheet, for you to get that lead into kvCore, that's a manual process for you. So you're going to have to manually identify the source as open house in order for this campaign to work for that lead. If every time that you enter one of those leads, you're giving them a hashtag of open house, then it probably makes more sense for your criteria. In this case, you can set your trigger to hashtag is, and then you can just start typing open house. Okay, if that's what you're using. If you're using something really specific, like open house 2022 or open house, I wouldn't get this specific, but if you're using an open house with a specific property address in your hashtag, however you are labeling your leads, you can use hashtag as your criteria. Okay, the source feature, if you do want to use source instead of hashtag, source is about where that lead is coming from and how kvCore is recognizing that lead. So if you have a lead that comes in through Making It Rain, for example, let's see, let's work from the list and see what we've. I don't want to do open house. So I think it's going to depend on when you, let me ask you a question, Millie, when you enter somebody in your kvCore, are you entering the source of that lead or are you just entering the hashtag?
I'll do hashtags. And I'm trying to go back to thinking about when I enter an actual lead, because I kind of just export them or import them. I don't have, it just says manual add. Like when it says lead source, it always says manual add.
Manual. And because that's exactly what's happening. You're manually adding them. So let me show you here. Here's like my dummy profile, right? That I resort back to. So if I'm using the source, in this case, I registered on my website to come into my kvCore as a test. So notice here that my source is organic website. So the reason that somebody's source would be open house is because you actually use the open house app with kvCore. Okay.
Ah, that's what I'm missing. There's an app. That's what I'm not connecting. Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
in your case, because you know that you are, when you're manually entering them, you're assigning them the hashtag, then for you, your trigger, if you come up here to the top of the campaign, what you want to do is use hashtag is open house. And if I just start typing the word open house, it should come up in my list of options. Okay.
I see. Makes perfect sense. If at the end, if we can go through the app, I appreciate, later on after this. Thank you. I wasn't connecting that.
Yeah. And I think we're going to be covering that app in one of the later sessions too, with the training, but I can put you in touch with that information now if you want to get some, get a jump on it and put it into use, because I don't think we cover it until December.
Thank you.
Sure. So, okay. So let's say we go with Millie's example. The hashtag is open house. So we've set our trigger. We don't want it to always run. Click next. Once I click next, it's going to take me to who I'm designing this for. In this case, I have buyers coming into an open house. So I'm going to click buyer. If you have sellers that often come into an open house, engage them as well. And all you have to do here is just click off any and all. So notice this time on this screen, if I click on one, it doesn't click off the other. So I could direct this to both buyers and sellers. This information is going to come from the lead status. So if you go back and look at a lead's profile, whatever their status is, it's going to pull in buyer seller. Let's click next. If you are modifying a campaign where you have made changes to an existing campaign, you might want to go ahead and change the name of the campaign to remind yourself, this is the one that I modified. The way I do that, and I always in all my trainings tell people to do that, is I just put my name at the beginning of the campaign. This way, if I went back and I saw that I had 2 open house campaigns, now I don't have to worry about, well, which one did I modify and which one did I leave intact from kvCore's build, okay? So in this case, I'm just gonna add Deanna to the front, click on next. That last screen gives you an opportunity to review the triggers that you've set, any changes to the name or description, and then click finish. Okay, so now if I head back to all my campaigns, to my campaign list, if I just go ahead and scroll, I can either scroll through, or if I have too many campaigns to scroll through, I can just type the word Deanna and search. And now here we go. Here's Deanna Open House, the campaign that I just modified for my trigger. Okay. So now let's say, to Rochelle's point, that going forward, she likes this campaign. She likes that it starts at hour 4. She likes that it jumps in at day 1, goes all the way to day 120. And that's great for the open house that she has coming up this weekend. But what about the open house that she had last weekend or 10 days ago? She wants to make use of most of this campaign, but those first couple of messages really aren't going to work for her. It's going to confuse the lead. Here's how we can do that. You can click on Deanna Open House, and now you can clone the campaign. Okay, so let's click on that. We're going to clone it. And we have to set up a trigger. Okay, now the trigger in this case, what you might want to do, Rochelle, is go back and tag all of those attendees for that specific open house with an additional hashtag. So you might want to do, in your case, something very specific, like let's say it was just this past Saturday. So you might want to do open house 11, what was it? 11/12/22 might be your hashtag that you put in here. Okay, so a very specific group of people that you want to target with this campaign. Then you can click next, work through your buyer and seller, work through, and when you modify your campaign name, I would also put that campaign date into the title, into the name of the campaign. You want to leave it set to always run no, next, and finish. Okay, so we've set up this clone. So now let's go back and take a look. So I still have my Deanna Open House, which was the one we first modified when we were talking with Millie about using the open house hashtag. But now we have this clone that's going to specifically be for the people that attended that open house where I'm trying to play catch up. We've got the campaign set up, but we need to modify it. The way that we do that is we're going to click on it. And let's take a look. So we are 5 days past where the attendee was at the open house and registered, whether it was on paper or through the app with Rochelle. So we know that this text message is not going to apply, but we want to make sure we look at the messaging and decide if we like the messaging and want to use it somewhere else. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and remove that first event. And then I'm going to take a look at the day 1, day 2, and day 3 events also. If I look at the email message, okay, so the first one was a text message, great to meet you today. This message, I would love to answer any questions that you have about the property. I might like to change and keep this, but change the date. So I'm going to hold off on editing that particular action for just a minute. So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to take a look. Day 2, I know I can remove, right? Because I've already passed day 2. I'm going to remove that particular event. So let's take a look at the day 3 email. Okay. So this is going to be very similar to the first email message. Just, again, thank you for visiting. Can I answer any questions that you have? So in this case, what I might do is I might modify like this. Thank you for visiting me this past weekend. Okay. Once I make any change, I'm going to make sure to hit save to save my changes. Whoop. And because I've made a change, I have to give it a name. The reason that you do this is because now the edit changes the template itself. So it's no longer the default template, it's been modified. You can name it whatever you want. So let's say I just call it Deanna following up open house. There's no wrong answer here, but you just have to give it a name that's unique from whatever it came in as from kvCore's library, because you've modified it. So save your changes. So now if I take a look at this campaign, I can get rid of the day one email. I can remove that. And maybe what I do is I just have to modify a little bit on my days to catch this lead up with where they need to be on a campaign, knowing that I'm kind of 5 days late. So in other words, on this event, I can change the date right here from within the action itself. I can change the days. I can get rid of day 3, and I can select from the drop down day 1. Save my changes. Okay. So now you'll see day 1 is my timeline. And then maybe okay with day 7. So maybe I allow 6 days to go by, or maybe I want to add a text message in between days 1 and 7. Maybe I want to add a phone call between days 1 and 7. Okay. I look at the campaign and I see that I do have a call scheduled for day 10. So how about we go ahead and insert a text message in the middle of day 1 and day 7. Okay, so the way that you can do that is you can click on add an action. We're going to choose text message. And now we have to give it a name. Okay, because this is something that you're creating from scratch. You have to name it something. So I'm going to call it Deanna Open House Text Follow-up. Okay. Now what I can do is I can have it say anything that I want. So remember, if I do these brackets, it'll pull in a field from my profiles field sheet. So first name, last name, first and last name. If I needed to reference their address or their phone number or their email, I could do that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I just want the first name. So I can just type first underscore name with the brackets. So it could be any message that makes sense for you, right? So again, I'm just trying to vary my touch points. I have 2 emails sort of back to back. I don't want to let 6 days go between email 1 and email 2 in this campaign. So I'm going to insert a text message for a couple of reasons. Number 1, to try to keep the communication going. We want to stay in touch close to the event, to the initial trigger event of why they even came into our database. We met this lead in person. So we want to try and reach out to them as many times as we can in the first few days and in the first week to see if we can generate some sort of engagement. Okay. So number 1, we're trying to make sure we have at least 3 touches in the first 7 days. Number 2, we want to vary the types of touches because some people might not be so responsive with email, but might be great about text message. So if you see that they respond to the text, but never even open the emails, that's going to give you insight into how you might successfully continue to engage the lead going forward. Okay. So type in your message. I'm just going to copy my template name over here to my, the action settings name. The way that you set up this particular event, it's going to come from you as the agent to the contact. So it'll read as, Rochelle or Millie or Michelle sending the message to the lead. And then you can be as granular as you want in terms of when you send it. So remember, we saw day 1 and day 6. So I'm going to go ahead and send this, let's say on day 3. Then I'm going to save it. And now let's take a look at what's happened with our campaign. So now I have an email, I have a text message, and I pick up with an email on day 7, then a phone call, and then the rest of the campaign will pick up from there. Okay, so what I'm trying to do, to Rochelle's point, with a sort of a retroactive open house, is modify the first few days of the campaign to reflect the fact that I'm looking backwards at this past weekend's open house, but then want to sort of transition it so that I can still leverage, with just a couple of modifications, how the rest of the campaign continues to flow. Does that make sense? Are there any questions about that?
I have a question. So
Mhm.
I've been doing all my little follow-ups manually, and unfortunately, you know how that works. Sometimes you're good and then it just falls off. With my follow-ups though, I don't do a lot with I do with email, but in the text messages, I've been trying to implement like a quick video or like something in Canva, just saying like, you know, just checking in. Can you pull anything into kvCore like that? Like, in other words, if I created, I don't know, Friday check-in, just wanted to see if you had any questions or blah, blah, blah. Can I put something into here yet and then text it out or email it out or whatever, or not yet?
So there are things that you can do to add, to make your touches, I guess, more robust. The things that are really easy to do from a campaign standpoint would be to add a PDF or to add like a link to another site or a resource. And I can show you what that might look like. It's hard to incorporate a video into the campaign because the campaign, remember, is going to reach a lot of different people, where when you're doing, and it's also designed to be automated so that it can pertain to a lot of different people at all different times of year, under a variety of circumstances, and even to a certain extent in a variety of markets. When you're talking about something as personal as, you know, a 20 or 30-second video clip, I think in that case, the way that I would approach that is go back to the lead's profile, that maybe you share, like maybe you create your content and then you can initiate a text message at the profile level. So the way that you would do that is you would go into your smart CRM. Let's pull up my my dummy lead profile again. Does that make sense? Why?
Yeah.
You might do it that way. So here you can send text message from here, or you can do a video from here too. And it will not only allow you to send it within kvCore, but then it'll make record of it here on the profiles timeline, as opposed to a campaign. The other thing that you can do, let's say that you had a video message that you wanted to create for Thanksgiving, and you wanted to send it out to a large number of clients. The way that you might do that, it's not a campaign, because remember, some people are going to start a campaign today. Some people are going to start a campaign 30 days from now. So your Thanksgiving message might no longer be relevant. But what you could do is you could go into marketing. Now notice here, I'm just going into the general marketing dashboard, get to these tiles. You're going to scroll down and find your scheduled mass emails tile here. And this is where you would have the ability to take that video message, incorporate it into a mass email. I'm not going to go into a whole lot here today because this kind of gets off the topic of the campaigns, but you can identify a group by hashtag or by other criteria, pull in your video, include maybe a short message. If you didn't want to do video, but wanted to do a graphic, maybe a pretty, you know, holiday Thanksgiving table kind of graphic, warm and fuzzy, send warm greetings. You can do all that from here, and it'll go out to all the people that you identify for that mass email message. So that might be another way, you know, to your point, Rochelle, what you're trying to accomplish is probably not best served within the campaign realm.
Right. That's pretty cool. So basically that's something like you can use as constant contact or whatever, like just happy Thanksgiving to your whole sphere and just push it
Yes.
out. You don't really even need constant contact or something. You
No,
could just do it this way. So I have one other kind of a dumb question here.
not at all. No
Okay.
dumb.
So you have the buyer in their open house, you met a buyer, you signed them up for the campaign. Now that buyer is working with you. I take them at, right? kvCore is really just lead. What's the word? How do I say it? Like, is it just like lead? The whole point of kvCore, I guess, is to get them to become a buyer. So if it's now my buyer, I don't really need to have them on any kind of campaign anymore, right? I take them off.
I would argue the opposite.
Really?
But it's about what kind of campaign. So,
Okay.
and maybe let's take a look. Let's go through a couple of other campaigns. So I started with the open house campaign because it's shorter. I think it's a little bit easier to follow some of the things we talked about in terms of triggers, in terms of edits. But let me show you, there are a couple of other campaigns that we've actually been making use of on our team locally with lead generation, with a program there. And then we've actually even gone a step further and built out a full 18-month campaign almost entirely from scratch. We've leveraged maybe a couple of the messages in some of the standard kvCore campaigns, but I think there's value in having a campaign run while you are actively working with the buyer. And I can show you an example of that in just a second. First, let's pivot from the open house campaign. Let's talk about another campaign that I really like called the Conversation Starter. Okay, so if I were interested in this campaign and wanted to learn about it, I might first start here in the kvCore library. You can type the word conversation, and that'll pull up multiple campaigns with the word conversation in it. The one I like is Conversation Starter for Buyer Leads. I've already pulled that campaign into my campaign library. So I'm going to just come over here and show it to you. So let's take a look at what this Conversation Starter does. It's a 7-day campaign, okay, that starts, here's the trigger details, when a new lead comes in from hashtag EXP leads. So I'm a Making It Rain user. I'm making it rain anytime a lead comes in. It will automatically be assigned a hashtag of EXP leads by kvCore. Okay, so that's the hashtag trigger designed for buyers. Okay, look at this. We're going to hit them with phone call, email, text, and there are also tasks for me built into this campaign with 9 touches. So if you take a look at this, it's 9 touches in the course of 14 days. So again, we've got engagement. If the lead is coming in through Making It Rain or through your website, if they register on your website, or if they come in from an open house, they have done something. They have taken some action to trigger them coming into your CRM. So you want to do as much as you can front loaded to try and engage. And again, sometimes people are more responsive to text, to email. So I personally like campaigns that hit you with a variety of formats because one might be more successful than another. Okay, so you'll notice that this starts out literally down to the first couple of minutes. So within minutes of somebody coming into your CRM, they're getting a text and an email, essentially thanking you for coming to the site. How can I help you? If I wanted to make any edits to those, I definitely could. But I think you can see the value in getting on this right away. And within day 2, you should have attempted a phone call. And from those who I work with on my team, that's very generous. We know that. Waiting 2 days to try and reach out by phone, your chances of success engaging them in phone conversation drop off significantly. Your best chance of phone conversation comes in the first 30 minutes when they've registered. And then it drops off again after the first 24 hours, and then drops off again after the next 24 hours after that. So you might want to modify it and move this up. But this is a very specific campaign to try and engage somebody who has come into your CRM. Maybe because they came from a Google ad and Making It Rain. Maybe they came from your website and came in as an EXP lead that way. But what's important to understand is that the last communication with the lead in this campaign is on day 7. And then a week later, after no communication between day 7 and day 14, there's a task to the agent that is basically telling you, look at this individual, decide where they are, where they need to be. They can't stay on new lead forever. So either you slide them into a prospect role, or maybe you move them into an active lead. And I would argue, if you've got any engagement at all with that lead, move them into active. Unless they specifically come to you and say, I'm really 12 to 18 months out, don't bother me. But I do like getting those property alerts. Okay. Then maybe in that case, I would say, all right, I'm going to put them into prospect. But anybody else, if they're opening your emails, if they're interested in the property alerts, if you even get one text message response, move them to active and keep them engaged. But so this might be one campaign that starts. So then let's take a look at another campaign. When you're getting that task on day 14, you have to make a decision. This campaign is ending, stops at day 14. So do you just let them drop off because there was no engagement? Or if there was engagement, do you just sort of forget about them? No, you want to put them on a longer term campaign now, based on what you know about the lead. One of the campaigns that we've leveraged on our team that you might want to consider, again, you can go back to the library and explore a little bit and see the various campaigns that kvCore produces and makes available to you. But one of the campaigns that we like is buyer nurture. So let's take a look at the buyer nurture campaign. Okay. Buyer nurture is designed for, now in this case, when you see the lead come in, they are a new lead in your kvCore CRM. You have to make the decision of moving them off of new lead into another category. And let me just visually show you what that means for anybody. If you're a visual person like me and you want to see what I'm talking about. So let's go back to my dummy profile. So when I registered on the website, or when I came in through a Google ad through Making It Rain, kvCore automatically put me here as new lead. With the conversation starter, it's going to engage me over the course of those first 7 days. But then by day 14, the agent, you have to make a decision, hopefully sooner, but maybe not, about where this lead should go. Should you slide them back to prospect? Should you activate them? Or was the data, complete garbage? And maybe you should just archive them and move them completely off your radar, which you can do as well. But in the conversation starter, you're working from this point. In the buyer nurture trigger is this: when somebody gets moved here, they will automatically be put on the buyer nurture campaign. That's how I have it set up in my kvCore. So let's go back to that campaign. Buyer nurture. Now notice something. We looked at the conversation starter, which was trying to engage, right, in those first 7 days. But remember, there was no interaction between day 7 and 14. I have to make a decision by day 14 in order to move that lead off of new, put them into another category that could then trigger a longer term campaign. So let's say I move them over to active lead, that it's somebody that's engaged, somebody that's opening the emails. I might occasionally get a response, but they're definitely opening what I'm sending them. Okay, so I want to keep that going. So I move them over to active lead, and they automatically start on buyer nurture. But what happens? They receive, so let's say today, so it's day 14. You could think about this. It's day 14 of my conversation starter campaign that I switch them over to active lead, and then they get on the buyer nurture campaign. But now they're not going to get their first communication from this campaign until day 7. So there's a big gap in there. So one of the things that we did was we went back and modified the campaign. And remember, I know the campaigns that I modified because I put my name at the front of the campaign when I make the change. So what I did was I modified the campaign and added a day one event. And what I put in was a message about building a better search. Okay. So we're trying to, again, engage this lead, get them to open our emails, get them to click and look at the properties that we're sending them through property alerts. So I thought it would be a valuable message to let people know, hey, you can control the criteria that we search on. Are there things that are meaningful to you? You know, what are you looking for in your dream home? Do you want to expand the search, restrict the search? You know, just know that you drive that train, sort of. So that was what we layered in as a day one message. Okay. To add just another level of engagement and round out so that there wasn't in total 14 days between the last message of one campaign and the first message of the new campaign. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Does anybody have questions about that? I'm just trying to check the chat. I told you I'm not that great about it. So
I have a quick question.
yes.
So once they become a client, do we keep them on that 18-month campaign? Or is there like a separate campaign for once they become a client? Like, is there a different verbiage?
Sure. So one of the things that, okay, so hold that for just a second, Anixa. Let's take a look at what's happening with the buyer nurture. So Rochelle, you had a question about, well, if I'm working with someone, and it kind of rolls into Anixa's question as well. If I'm working with someone, why should I have them on a campaign? You want to make sure that you continue to engage the lead in a variety of ways, and just getting them on a campaign, I think, continues to reinforce your value, if that makes sense, and your knowledge and your support. If you look at the buyer nurture, notice that there are components here of these messages. If you just go by the subject lines, like the titles of each of these communications, notice how kind of broad they are and how they cover a wide range of topics in the real estate space. Okay. So again, there could just be resource in here that's layered in, factored in with other things that you're doing and working on with a particular lead. What we found for our team, because we are working to find success with making it rain and with lead generation, there were two things that we felt in play. I like buyer nurture if you are that person that wants a campaign, wants to be able to touch your client on a regular basis beyond just phone calls, personal phone calls, or personal text messages, that you wanted to leverage the automation to some extent. So this is something. But what we found is, number one, 12 months might not be enough, especially in this market. Okay. That may be an 18-month campaign to nurture a buyer might be more practical and realistic. And we're taking that not only from what's happening in the market, but we solicited advice and feedback from other people who have experienced success with online leads and conversion of leads to actual closings. Okay, so that was the first thing. How do we extend this? And the other thing is there a way that we can maybe tweak our messaging a little bit? Because in the feedback that we got from agents within our team, some people felt like a couple of these messages were not logical, or just too random. And in other cases, they didn't like the verbiage that was being used, or like the world's ugliest houses. Like, how does that play into the conversation? It just felt too separate from anything else that we might be trying to do with a client. So what we did is we took it one step further and completely built out an 18-month campaign. And we started, and the way I would recommend if you wanted to do something like this, we started with a spreadsheet, because it's much easier to work from either a spreadsheet or a Google Doc, or, like a word processing form. If you're trying to type something out, in my opinion, than trying to do it directly in kvCore if it's going to be complex. I've worked on newsletter content, I've worked on email content and campaign content that I've lost because I clicked on the wrong thing in kvCore, and that's frustrating. So I encourage, if you're thinking about wanting to build your own campaign or do something like a newsletter, start in a Google Doc or a Google sheet or a word processing like an Office, Excel, or Microsoft Word document. Save yourself that headache. That way, the worst thing that happens is you just screw up on the copy and paste, but you still have your content intact and you can just go back and paste it again. So let's take a look at what we did to your point, Rochelle, and then hopefully to maybe further on to your point, Anixa. The campaign that we built for 18 months is designed to cover a number of angles. It's designed to educate a client on the process of buying or selling a home. So we talk about everything from, renting versus buying to what the transaction timeline might look like, everything from signing the contract all the way to the walkthrough and settlement. And we break it out and are constantly saying, can I recommend loan officers for you? Can I recommend attorneys for you? Why is the home inspection so important? And how do you become educated? Why is the appraisal so important? So even though those components might not perfectly line up with where you are with a client, you're designing a campaign to be educational and to kind of help a potential client understand how the real estate market works. You do this every day for a living. Your client does not, probably, and they probably only go through this process once every 3 to 5, if you're lucky, 5 to 10, more likely years. So getting the refresher on what each of these components means and the significance of it. Also, our campaign very intentionally asks multiple times over 18 months for referrals. That's another important component. And then lastly, the last thing that I think was really beneficial in building our own campaign is we created something that was much more task heavy. So we built in more phone calls. We built in more personal messages. So you'll see where we have tasks like this one on day 290. A task to create a personal message, make a 30-second video, text it out, something about the market, something that's relevant to whatever engagement or communication you've had recently with that lead. Okay, so it does, the way that this particular campaign is structured, it's designed to continue to add value regardless of where you are with that buyer. Now, once you have a buyer that is actually closed, at that point, this campaign loses some relevance. But as long as they are somewhere in the purchase process, I think that this will continue to add value and build on what you're already doing to show confidence and reduce anxiety and stress for the lead. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, it does. Hopefully they close before 18 months.
Exactly, right? That's what I want.
It's over.
Before the end of this year.
Well, so
Question.
yes.
Hi. So
Hi, Lynette.
let's say you've added someone into your CRM and you've set up property alerts for them. So can you, I answered my own question. I would want to maybe remove some of these because it may not still be relevant to that buyer. Like in other words, where you had getting pre-approved is essential in this market.
Mhm.
So I'm working with the person, then they're already pre-approved. So I would want to remove that from the campaign for that person. Makes sense?
It does. It definitely does, but But there could also be value in just reiterating the importance of it. So, like, let's go back to the campaign that we built, and give me a second to just, so what we did, if you take a look, like a little compare and contrast, this was the original buyer nurture, the 1 year. Okay.
Mhm.
And so the 1 year standard from kvCore references the importance of pre-approval at day 45.
Okay, stop. Why was
Uh-huh.
that put at day 45? So far
Um,
down.
Sure. And that's probably a great question for kvCore. So this, but again, the challenge when you're kvCore and you're trying to roll out a product for thousands and thousands of agents, and you're also trying to roll out a product that can function and serve the community in a variety of markets. You know, if you put it too soon in the process in another market, you know, with different market conditions, it might feel too soon or too rushed. So you can argue both sides of the coin. Now, for us, with our complete custom build, we took a little bit of a different approach. So here on our campaign, we went as early as day 5 and went with a text message about how pre-approval is critical. So we started that mindset very early in our communication and in our campaign, but we don't just leave it there. We go back and talk about how you strengthen an offer. Can we evaluate your pre-approval? Okay. Now this comes at day 145. You can probably even argue in this market that that might be too soon or too late rather, because with rising interest rates, pre-approval from 30 days ago might no longer be valid or might no longer support where the buyer is in their home search. But the idea is that we're trying to do something. If you keep eliminating campaigns because they aren't absolutely perfect for your lead, you're going to be left with nothing. And then you lose whatever automation is available to you to have some sort of engagement, some sort of top of mind presence with that lead. So understand that this is not going to be perfect every time. What you're just trying to do is find something that helps you stretch yourself out and be in places where you can't always be, if that makes sense. If there was something that you very specifically, like I remember Anixa, you very specifically did not like the renting versus buying message in the kvCore template. So we moved away from that and did something, you know, different in our messaging. It felt like this was very discouraging of home buying to some of our agents. So we changed that. So there might be something that you absolutely hate, then yes, go ahead and modify it. But if you keep trying to build the perfect campaign for one lead, chances are it won't work perfectly for anybody else because every person's journey is going to be a little bit different. You're just trying to check as many boxes in the engagement category as possible. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Sure. Are there any other questions about what we've looked at so far? How to set up a trigger, how you might modify a campaign. If you wanted to build a campaign from scratch, like we did, where you wanted to, again, start from a spreadsheet, start from a Google Sheet and work your way over to kvCore, when you come over to your My Campaigns, you're just going to click on Add a Campaign. It's going to start by asking you for the logic. What are your triggers going to be for this campaign? And then once you set it up, it's going to create that campaign down here in the list. And that's when you can go in and click on it and start layering in all your actions. So when you first click on a brand new, newly created campaign, when you click into it, you're not going to see any touches or any channels. Okay. It's once you click into it and start adding your touches, adding your actions, and it will automatically reflect. So we built out something with buyer nurture that's 57 touches compared to the 23 touches that were in the standard 1 year campaign. Okay, so we're extending our campaign by 6 months and more than doubling. Again, with a lot of agent task driven touches in here. Okay, was there a question?
Two questions. Yes, two questions. And excuse my toddler. One of the questions is, Is it only manual? Let's say we're ending from one campaign and going to another, right? Let's say the open house to the buyer nurture. I know you say you can manually do it where you're at the end kind of triggering, like you're changing the lead type essentially. Is there a way to manually start from one to another, or will it always be a task when you're ending one and then going to another?
You can always make a change manually. So let me show you where you would do that. So
Sorry,
let
I
me go
meant
back to-
automatically.
Oh, automatically. Well, let me show
Yeah,
you.
like so I'm ending one and then I don't have to put a task where, let's say there's 50 people and I have to change them to another one where it just breathes through, or would that not make sense because you want to make sure, you're looking at them?
So the challenge will be the way that the automation works is there's got to be some sort of system trigger that causes that new campaign to take hold. So let me look at one thing before I fully answer that question. But to answer the reverse side of what Millie's asking, if you wanted to manually change the campaign that someone was on, maybe you have a buyer who now has moved into the realm of client contract or even closed, and you want to stop the nurture campaign and put them on a different campaign, you can either just change their status and let one of the triggers that you've set up pick up on the new campaign, or you can come into their profile and on the right-hand side, go to active campaigns and manually change. You can add a campaign and then you can click on the little pencil to edit to remove the campaigns that campaigns that might currently be in place. Okay. So there's a way to do that manually to modify the campaign that they're on. To Millie's point, let me just think for a second if there's a way. Essentially, I guess what you're talking about is like to almost like renew a campaign or just pick on something. I'm
thinking more of the ones that really don't engage so that they're not active leads, they're kind of sitting
Yes.
there. And then you're just
Yeah.
like, okay, I want you to keep running through campaigns,
Try something like if we look at a sphere campaign. I gotta think about that, Millie. Let's see. Status is. I don't think so. Typically, what will happen is with any campaign, there should be some task that alerts you. So you're going to get that daily email from kvCore, and that daily email is going to alert you that there has been a change, that a campaign has ended, that you need to go in and take action for that lead, either to restart a campaign, put them onto a different campaign. This particular one for a sphere is 990 days. So if you haven't gotten any engagement in 3 years, whether you put them on another campaign or maybe you archive them, or maybe you need to evaluate whether the data that you even have for them is current. It's still, I don't know that there's a way that just the fact that they're coming off of a campaign that kvCore will automatically put them on a new one. I think it requires some sort of intervention, if you will, from you, some action that you have to take to evaluate where the lead is and make a decision about where to best place them next.
makes sense. And then the second question, I understand if the answer is no, is there a means to get a copy of the 18-month? And I understand if it's just for your team campaign.
No, I'm happy to share that. Anybody that's on Leader's Edge, I'm happy to get you a copy of that. And that actually leads very well into our next conversation, that if you do go ahead and create a campaign, you have the ability to share it. And the way that you would do that is you could just click on the campaign that you've created. So in this case, I have the 18-month campaign. I have a share code, but what'll happen is what it would normally say here, share campaign. when you click on share, it creates a code and you can just give that code to someone else. And they can go ahead and pull it into their kvCore. The way that you on the receiving end would pull it into your kvCore is, let's say you're here, you've come into marketing, you've come into smart campaigns, and then you're on the My Campaign page. Okay. Instead of clicking on add campaign, you're going to come right next door to this little icon that looks like clipboard. Okay. And this is where you will enter the token. This is where you will enter that number that correlates to the actual campaign here. And then it will pull it into your kvCore. From that point, like I said, anytime that I'm working with a campaign, if I want to make changes to it, first thing that I would do is clone it. So if once I pull in the campaign, I click into the campaign itself, I can clone it, put my name, so if I've sent this campaign to you, Millie, I would pull it in with the clipboard icon I just showed you. Then I would click into the campaign and I would clone it. And I would put Millie Buyer Nurture 18-month campaign. And then any edits that I make to the campaign itself, I would make in the one titled Millie. And then the one titled Millie is the one that I would turn on. And that's the most important thing. So we've talked about how to read a campaign, how to set the triggers. We've talked about ways you can modify an existing campaign if there are a couple of things you want to tweak or change. We've talked about how you could even build one from scratch. But that doesn't mean anything at all unless you turn the campaign on. And the way that you do that is from your My Campaigns page. You want to make sure that you go over to the right-hand side and toggle on the campaign. If you do everything else, but don't take this step, the campaign will not commence automatically. Okay. You'll notice again, just as a reminder, that you'll see things that say team and things that say user. That's because I'm on a team platform. What you should typically see when you are working in your My Campaigns page, everything should say user. When you're looking at the kvCore library, you're not going to see anything but add to my library on the right-hand side. And that's how you know if you're in this particular section of the Smart Campaigns dashboard, you're not going to have the ability to edit, only have the ability to view. You need to pull the campaign into your My Campaigns dashboard, and then you can start working on it, modifying it, and turn it on for use. Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If you already have an active campaign, and you might have gone through it, but so much information, but if you're already running an active campaign and the status is on, can you still modify it while it's on, or do you have to turn it off in order to modify it so that your leads see the modification or the revision of your campaign process?
So if you modify a campaign, like if you just go in, let's say you have a lead that's day 30 into a campaign, and you've gone ahead and you don't like the day 90 email, and you're saying like you edit the day 90 email. Then if you just make that edit within the campaign, then that particular lead should get the revision. They should get the modification.
Oh, okay. And so I don't have to turn it off.
You don't have to turn it.
Okay.
You don't have to turn it off and turn it back on. But the thing that will be impacted is if you make changes to, say, the triggers, for example. Triggers will not work like retroactively. So you changing a future event to somebody who's on that campaign that hasn't hit that event yet, you'll be okay. But let's say you change the trigger on something. If when you change a trigger, it's only going to affect future occurrences of that trigger. It won't work retroactively. So if you wanted to institute a campaign that goes out to anybody moved over to active lead, and then you turn that campaign on today, if somebody was already switched over to active lead before today, that campaign will not automatically pick up on them. I don't believe. You'll have to go back
gotcha.
and manually add that campaign to that person.
Okay. Thank you.
When it comes back to the toggle, right? So turning on the status,
Uh-huh.
I guess I got a little confused with the always run and this toggle. So if let's say, for example, I have the hashtag open house and I have the toggle on and we have that campaign. As soon as that hashtag goes in, it starts it. But I'm sorry, I got confused with the always run when it's
Sure.
off. Like, when does it not run? Like, I just want to make sure it runs. But then
Yeah. So let's say you have a campaign set up for open house. Okay. So anytime a lead comes in from open house, they go onto the open house campaign. But let's say you also have a campaign for anybody that comes in as another one, like as a new lead. Okay. And new lead might be somebody that comes from your website, somebody that comes in from another source, like say Making It Rain. When you set always run to no, what that helps to ensure is that you don't have multiple campaigns running that might end up being more confusing and duplicating and kind of nonsensical to the lead, if that makes sense. So the idea by setting it to always run to no is you're trying to avoid a situation where, because of all the campaigns that you're setting up, that somebody might apply or multiple campaigns might apply to that one lead. What kvCore will do is it will identify the campaign that has the best match, if you will, out of those, and it will run that campaign. Now, there could be cases where you do want to always run a campaign. But I would say more likely than not, you want to avoid that because you don't want the duplication. You want the client to be receiving messages that don't feel like, I just got a thank you message 2 days ago. Why is she sending me another thank you message? Or, she just sent me the email about pre-approval, yesterday. Why am I getting a text message about it today? Like that kind of thing. You don't want to, and you don't want to completely bombard the client either. Okay, that's the other thing.
Okay, so for example, just to do active listening. So let's say I have the open house and the trigger is open house new lead. So it comes in and then I have another campaign that's just new lead. If I have the always run off, but the status is on, then kvCore will see when it comes to the open house, which I found the app, thank you, that it'll hit that. But if a new lead comes in, it's not just going to put the new lead on the open house one, it's going to put it on the proper campaign.
That's right.
Okay, makes sense. Beautiful.
Yep, that's right. Okay, so a couple of other things that I just want to touch on too. Let me just make sure. Awesome. Oh, I'm glad that you're finding it helpful. That's great. Okay, so a couple of other things that I just want to mention in the context of campaigns. One of the things that we've been seeing, like I said, as a team, my team, we've been working on this Making It Rain campaign. And there's this really weird thing that happens called behavior alerts. So with Making It Rain, we are very engaged. Anybody on the team that's participating, we're very engaged with like leveraging the campaigns, using the automation, managing the leads in the way that you should to try and garnish the most success, knowing that success is usually going to be long-term. But then something strange will happen where if 2 weeks goes by and a lead doesn't come to the website, and then, 2 or 3 weeks later, the lead revisits the website, they get this new message. Thank you for visiting my website. But here we are being very diligent about the campaign. And then this like out of left field message just sort of comes into the mix. And it feels kind of confusing. Like you've been engaging with the lead, you've been communicating, maybe you've been modifying property alerts based on feedback that you're getting from them. And then all of a sudden they get this, oh, thanks for coming back to my website sort of message. And it's going to feel confusing to them. Well, there's a way that you can turn that off. We just figured that out in the last week. So I want to make sure that you know about this too, because again, it kind of can create more confusion and sort of head scratching for your lead. From the marketing dashboard, okay, if you go to the main marketing dashboard, there's a tile up in the top right-hand corner called behavioral automation. So you can click on that, and here in behavioral automation, you can turn off or turn on those alerts. So the couple that I would definitely make sure that you turn off are the lead revisits and maybe properties being viewed in the last day. Because again, if you're communicating with someone and you're in it for the long haul with an 18-month campaign, and every week or two they might respond, or you'll see that they're clicking on your email messages, that's great to kind of come back at it. Like, look at I can show you the message. Okay. This message, I'm glad you were able to spend a bit of time on my site again. It looks like you're doing a few different home searches. I'll research your areas and set up property alerts. So this message loses its value when you've already got a campaign moving and working where you know that the client is clicking and opening those emails. Okay. So I would say, let's turn that alert off at a minimum. You can look at each of these messages and decide if you find it valuable or not valuable. The most important point that I just want to drive home here is that you have control. Typically, the way these behaviors work is if this event happens, so if the lead comes back to your site after being away for more than 14 days, if there's a good phone number, the message will go out via text. If there's no good phone number for the lead, then it goes out via email. And you'll also get a text message notification of that behavior alert. Okay, so here's a way to turn that off. The other thing that I just want to mention in the context of a campaign, we've talked about it a little bit in the past about property alerts. So I'm not going to necessarily spend a lot of time unless somebody wants to see it. If you weren't able to see that in one of our prior trainings and want to go over it and you want to hang out, I'm happy to do that. Let's go back into a lead's profile. So when a lead comes in, for example, if they come in through your website, they come in because they tried to perform a property search, and you should have your criteria set up on your website to get registration information, get the email and the phone number for the lead in order for them to proceed and conduct their search. Okay. Once the lead comes into your CRM, the criteria that they used for their property search is going to follow them, and it's going to put them on an automated property alert. From the lead's profile, you're going to have the ability to modify that and build off of that here in the right-hand side with property alerts. The other things that I just wanted to mention, because property alerts for buyers and some of these other reports for buyers or sellers can really round out what you're doing from a campaign standpoint. Okay, so campaigns are going to be more general, right? If I'm a client and I'm looking I'm in Marlton, right? So if I'm in my home search in Marlton and I'm on a buyer nurture campaign, there's not a single message, not a single email or text message that will reference Marlton. So me as the agent, when I'm making a phone call or I'm sending a personal video message, I'm going to try and be more personal and specific to that lead. The other way that you can be personal and specific to that lead is through these supplementary tools outside of the campaigns. So property alerts. And then the other two that I would recommend that you look at, play around with if you get the chance, are market reports and listing valuations. Listing valuations are going to be really beneficial when you're working with a seller. But if we're spending most of our time today talking about how we're nurturing buyers, then the market report is going to be a great tool for you to be able to leverage. Just like with property alerts, where you can set up the timing, whether somebody should get an alert daily, weekly, monthly, you can do the same thing with the market report. And so I'll just show you real quick what one of those looks like. So this might be something, imagine you have a buyer on an 18-month nurture campaign, looking at the long game here. And now they're going to receive once a month this market report telling them all about Evesham. If they had interest in multiple towns, then you can add, I think you can add at least a second and possibly a third town market report. Okay. And so it's going to give them information every 30 days about what's going on in the market, what the average price is, the average sale. Then they're going to have the ability to click in to view more detail on some of these properties. They're going to know what's been most popular, what's been most expensive. Again, just trying to appeal to somebody's curiosity. And then you'll be able to know from their profile if they've opened. You'll get notification that the market report was sent. So that's what this is right here, that the report was sent. So I ran one again this morning, so you'd be able to see it fresh. And then you're going to get the feedback that it was opened. Okay, so again, you're going to learn something about the lead. If you're coming here and looking at their profile, don't overlook the quality of information that you're getting here through automation. You'll know that not only was it sent, but here I can say, oh, wow, they opened it literally as soon as they received it. Okay. And if that's happening consistently, you might want to consider upping your game with that lead, that you give yourself the task of maybe trying to reach out to them sooner rather than later by phone, or insert more personal messaging or video into your communication to really drive home the sort of personal touch. Okay, the automation will not do everything for you. It's just trying to help for you to stay top of mind, and then give you the tools to identify, if I have 1,000 leads in my database, how do I identify through this feedback, through these analytics, where my time would be best spent? Well, your time is going to be best spent on the people who are most engaged in what you're mailing out to them, what you're emailing them, what you're texting them, and so forth. Okay. So
Question.
these, yeah.
Regarding analytics, does this pop up on the dashboard to know who's opened it, or is there a means to find, okay, these people opened it versus not?
There's nothing on the dashboard that's going to give you this information. The way that your dashboard would work, and I don't want to scroll down, Millie, because quite honestly, every time I show too much information on the dashboard, YouTube doesn't let me post the video. So,
Not a
but
problem.
there is a way, like if you're at your main dashboard, so if I were to scroll down, I should be able to see recent lead engagement. And so then you can go in. So let me see if let's try hot leads. So there are, if you look at criteria at the top of this, so when you come again to your dashboard, scroll below your objectives, like what your tasks are for the day, scroll below these buttons, and you can come here and filter some of the client tiles that are going to appear on your dashboard to be able to recognize if you just want to see what's going on with new leads, or maybe if you want to try hot leads. That could be a beneficial way for you to identify maybe somebody that's very engaged that you want to focus on sooner rather than later. If that
Perfect.
makes
Thank you.
sense. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Lynette. Are there any other questions that I might be able to answer? Are there any points that were confusing, that didn't make sense, that we should go over? Does anybody want to see something again?
I have a question, Diana.
Yes. Hi, Inez.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
When the instructions said send them a video, can we do it from the same computer with the kvCore? Or do we have to do the video, prepare it, upload it?
So one of the things that I'm working on, there are a couple of platforms, a couple of like components within kvCore that have really recently been built out. One of the topics that we're going to cover, back and find my dates, next week. So there are two things. There's Core Social, and then the other thing that I'm working on is Core Video. So hopefully next week, I'll be able to give you some insight on how you can leverage, if you go back and take a look at me as the sort of dummy lead, using this video here. So, so I'm working on understanding what some of the changes and enhancements are to this, where you can do it right from your computer, versus how you might reach out if you wanted to do like just a personal message from your cell phone and forward that video on to clients from your own cell phone. There's a few different ways that you can do it. From the way that we built our campaign, our our team campaign and where we've
Because
put in, like if I just
I
sort
saw
it.
I saw that oh, send them a video. It's like
Yeah.
from like a
So in that case, what's most important, let me just filter this to the tasks. So
yeah, on the day 1:30
yep. So multiple times we have
or the
personal
45.
message.
Mhm.
Yep. So the idea here again is that going back to my point about if I'm a lead and I'm searching in Marlton, none of these email or text messages that are automated are going to speak specifically to me or my search in Marlton. So what you want to make sure that you're doing is when you're reaching out either by phone or by personal message, that you are somehow taking it to that very specific personal level with that lead. How you get that message out is up to you, whether you feel more comfortable doing something right on your cell phone, which I think a lot of people do, or as you continue to learn and train on kvCore, if you find that this is a good vehicle, do it here. But the most important thing is just do it somehow.
Somewhere. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Another question I had, if I may, you had noted, try and get people's numbers when they come to your website. Now, I know that when they come to my website, I get the email. Is there a quick way that you know to get their phone number? Because I know like when I signed in
Yes.
myself, they kind of just check in as like, put your number as your password.
Yep.
But I don't see them getting the phone number when they put in their email address.
Yeah. I
So
have the
you
same-
do, the way that you would make sure that that's turned on is you want to go to, give me a second here. So you want to go to Web and IDX. This is going to be a website setting. And you want to go to your website manager. And then under the website manager, you can go to website settings. So what you're going to do is we want to scroll down. Let me just bear with me here. I don't want to make anybody car sick, but it's a place where you want to make sure, and I might have even gone too far. Yeah.
Was it contact phone?
No, how many clicks it tells you they have to subscribe and
Yeah.
give what information they have to give you if they want to continue. Is that
That's what
what
I'm
you're looking for?
Yes, I just in this whole big list. That's what I'm trying to find. There are two things. Okay, here. So let me just see if I can give you a context of where this is. Okay, so here's the place. If you are under website settings, towards the top, it's where you're going to identify like your background images for your homepage, and just scroll down a little bit. And you're going to get to the point where you're going to see two boxes, mandate phone and force lead registration. These are the two things that you want to look at if you find that you're not getting the information with phone number. You want to make sure that you turn it on. kvCore defaults to no, because according to their data and their analytics, you get more leads when you don't require a phone number. However, we know that the campaigns work best when you have a phone number to incorporate text message. So if you're actively using campaigns, I recommend that you make sure that this is toggled on to collect phone number. And then also take a look here to see when they're being forced to register. Okay, you have a number of options here where you don't have to require registration, where you can require registration after, I think it's maybe a certain number of views, like you can identify 2 views, 3 views, 5 views. So I think most people, we do tend to default, I default to normal, which is after 1 view. So give people a chance to set up their search, view 1 property, and then boom, require them to register. So check on those 2 things. If you are still finding that you are not getting good phone information, then it's probably because people are putting garbage into the field, which is not something that we can control, unfortunately.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But then the thing that you might want to do is that if they come into your CRM and they are opening your emails or they are opening the property alerts, like if the system did pick up on their search criteria and you see that they're opening the alerts, then I would go into their profile and I would send them a personal email message like, hey, it looks like my property alerts might have some appeal. I can expand on that for you. And even better, if you want to give me your cell phone number, I can text some things to you as well. So, hold out hope that you can round out their profile and somehow get that cell phone number.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any other questions or like total points of confusion? There's a lot of information in campaigns. And like I said, I haven't necessarily gone this deep before in any of our past training, but there's so much that you can do. If you are not comfortable with the technology, that at a minimum, just use the standard automation that kvCore prepares, because keeping you top of mind is the goal. You cannot be everywhere all the time. But if you feel comfortable with technology, or as you experience more and more of how these campaigns work, as your confidence builds, start to tweak some things so that you can feel like some of this messaging is more your voice than a sort of a standard vanilla generic voice. Okay. So, and if you have any questions along the way, let me know. The other thing too, before you head out, if you just want to make sure, if you're not already getting our weekly updates to let you know that the video has posted, or to get access to the Dropbox where we're posting some of our ancillary resources, just go ahead and stick your email in the Dropbox or in the chat box. What I will do with the 18-month nurture campaign is I'm going to add a document today into the Dropbox that will give you the code to be able to link that campaign into your kvCore. And I'll give you some detailed instructions on how to actually go about doing that. Okay. So great. I hope that you found this helpful. If you do have questions, you can always reach out to me. You'll have my contact information in my email signature, and let's keep it going. Remember, next week, we're going to tackle some of these unique components of kvCore that maybe kind of like Core Present that you might not have even known existed, like Property Boost, Core Social, Core Video. And then that's going into Thanksgiving. And then just again, make note, no training on the 30th. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
So very
Get
much.
a cappuccino or an espresso now to fuel your afternoon.
Thank
Need an
you.
I
ad.
appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Likewise. Thank you.
And thank you. Bye-bye.